Hello everybody and welcome to the third video of our Monday series where we are creating an assemblage collage. I'm Miss Rachel and I want to go over what we've done over the last 2 weeks and then jump right into what we're doing today. So the first week we glued a bunch of magazine pages together or junk mail, whatever you had kind of lying around to create this really thick, stiff board so that we could put our background on. We also jumbled up some papers and glued them down to create a texture so we could give our painting some depth and texture. So we did that. And then the second week, we added more texture. We added little bits and bobs like this that can open up and do interesting things because this collage is not just 2-dimensional, it's 3-dimensional. So we added some pieces to give it a third dimension. So now we are here. Oh, and we also painted this. We painted our background all black or all one solid color last week. So now we are here. We have our board that we created. I think you can still see the mailer that I used. And then I have my 3-dimensional pieces in there, straws, popsicle sticks, whatever else I could get my hands on. And it's all painted black. So today we are going to add our collage pieces, meaning like our pictures or any trinkets or anything we want to add. But I'm going to focus just on the collage pieces. So I have some pictures of flowers and things because mine is inspired by my grandma who likes to garden or liked to garden. So that's what I'm going to do. I realized I was being a little too ambitious trying to put everything in one place. So I focused just on the gardening. And as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 images. And even this might be a little too much. But I always say it's better to have what you need and not use it than to need it and not have it. So I'm going to start with these 7 images, and then if I end up needing more, I will add them later. But in addition to your collage images, you will need some paint, and I'm going to slide you over because I have a little bit on my palette here. So, I'm not sure if you can see, I have this light green paint that I already mixed, and then I still have some black paint here. And I will show you why I have that later. I also have some sponges and Q-tips for painting today. In addition to my paint brushes, I have a large one. I have the smaller ones for details. We're also going to use some water since we do have paint. I'm not sure if that's on my supply list, but if we're painting, we're going to need some water. And I also have some school glue, but I think I will be able to get through this particular step without the school glue, but the glue may help if you have some larger items that aren't just paper. If you're adding something 3-dimensional, you may need to glue it down and then add your paint. So for today's steps is really 3 different things that you can do, and you can do them in any order that you want. We are going to add our colorful paint. So I chose one color, and hopefully you'll get to see why I only chose one color a little bit later. I'll be adding more colors next week, but I'm going to start with one color this week. And then, so we're going to add a little bit of color. We're going to add our pictures, and then we're going to put paint over the top of the pictures to make it kind of fade into the background a little bit, so it doesn't look like just a scrappy kind of collage. So let me jump into this and show you what I mean. I'm going to use this picture to start, and I think I will use my glue and water to kind of make it like paper mache and soften it up. So let me grab my school glue, and I'm going to put some, let me grab a paintbrush also. Oh, I'll actually use my larger one. I'm going to wet this paintbrush and then get a little bit of glue and see if I can't get this laid down on here. I'm going to rip it too because I don't want it to be this big. And I don't want these little things in there. But I will show you how I'm going to get over that pretty soon. Actually, you know, I'm going to dip this whole thing in water because I want to soften this paper up so that it kind of meshes into the background the way that I want it to. So you don't need to do this, but I'm showing you different techniques you can use. And then I'm going to add some glue on the top of it to seal it in place. Let's see. I think I'm going to rip it up some more. So I chose this image because my grandma always had a bunch of hostas, which are those plants right there. She had so many of those particular kinds of plants. In fact, my mom has some of the ones that my grandma had at her house. She now has them at home. So I'm adding those in the background. And I wet this paper so that it will mold over my 3D pieces and I can still have that three-dimensional aspect kind of shining through. And then I'm adding the glue on top just to kind of seal it into place and keep it all where I put it. So again, this third step in the series is not too complicated, but the biggest thing you're going to have to worry about is drying time. So I have some paint. It picked up some paint on here, so I'm just going to clean this brush off, but keep going because this is still my background, kind of. I'm adding a little bit more to it to make it a little more interesting, but if you don't want any of your background on your pictures, then make sure it is completely dry. Mine wasn't. So I got a little paint on my pictures, but that's okay because in another part, a little bit later on, we're going to add paint to the top of these pictures so they don't stand out like a sore thumb so much. So I got those on there. I sealed them down with a little bit of glue. And once that dries, you'll be able to see the picture a little more, but it won't be, you know, so stark. So I'm going to add these roses because she had a rose bush too. And I'm going to do what I did before where I wet my paper so that it is easy to mold over the different 3D pieces I have going on in my background. Kind of stick that in place. Maybe put a piece right here over one of my straws. And you'll see that adding the paper, adding the water to the magazine paper makes it really, really flexible. So if you're using magazine images, then this is a good technique. If you're using something thicker than magazine paper, you may want to just leave it in the water for a little bit longer. Or if it doesn't mold over the 3D pieces, then you'll have to be creative and figure out another way to incorporate that by maybe cutting it smaller or having it lay on top of the 3D pieces. It's really just up to you and whatever works best. So, yep, I still have some paint on this paintbrush. So I like that I still have the paint on here because it's kind of making these images fade into the background a little bit more, which is what I want, which is one of the steps that I told you, or one of the techniques that we're doing today. Kind of just adding some paint over the edges so that our little collage images don't stick out so much. We want it all to kind of mesh together. So now I'm going to use my smaller brush and go over to my black paint and grab a little and just add some around the edges of the images that I just added, because I really don't want those hard edges of the paper showing, like I have here. So I'm going to add some paint, and then I'll need to let this finish drying so that I can really hide those edges with my paint. And you can do this with your background color, or you can go ahead and take this time to add your lighter color if you're using a lighter color, or your more colorful color. It's really up to you and how you want this to look in the end. There's kind of no wrong way to do this. So just adding paint. And if you have one, you can even use a hair dryer to dry your layers faster. But I'm not worried about speed here, so I don't think I'm going to pull one out, because this is really all that I'm doing today. And then next week we will finish this up by adding our big focal point, and that just means the thing that we want to really draw people in, the first thing that we want people to see when they look at this. So I'm going to add a big focal point, which may be a picture. It may be an item that I end up gluing to this. It could be anything, really. So I like doing this step with the black, like my background, because it gives me another opportunity to fill in any areas that I may have missed last week. Because remember, we had issues painting the background so that it was completely one color, because our 3D pieces add a bunch of crevices. So this gives you another opportunity to really fill in those areas that you want to be covered by your background color, whatever color that may be. So I think I'm going to add another picture. The other part of this, I'm going to just rip it off, make it a little smaller, dip it in my water so that I can make it malleable, and I might even rip it again, kind of add it on top of some other things that I have going on here. So because we're using so much water and paint, this is going to take some time to dry. And if you remember from the other videos, that's kind of the biggest challenge of this project, is waiting for things to dry. So that hair dryer might come in really handy if you are not a very patient person. But if you have some other things to work on, you can let this dry, come back to it. Just make sure that your work area is set up in a way that allows you to do that. It's kind of out of the way. And your table is covered with your plastic bags if you're using those like I am. So we're going to come back to our paintbrush. And I just have my, these are just napkins that I'm using today instead of paper towel. And I think I'm going to add a little more of the glue that already has a little paint in it. Make that fade into the background. Because while I want it to be seen, it's not the most important thing. That's coming as we wrap this up next week. So, and now you're probably like, well, why do I have this colorful paint, Miss Rachel? Well, I will show you. The colorful paint we're going to use to go back in to our collage and highlight the things that we want to highlight. So we are controlling what the audience is focusing on, and we're doing that very intentionally. And the way that we're doing that today is with the colorful paint. So it would be helpful for me to grab my hair dryer, which I just told you I wasn't going to use. But let's see what happens when I don't. Let's see if this is going to be a cautionary tale or a success. So I'm going to grab my sponge because this is how I'm choosing to add my detail paint. You can do it with a smaller paintbrush, maybe even smaller than this one here, something with a really small tip. If you don't have a super small paintbrush, you can use Q-tips like this or even a toothpick, but I'm going to use this sponge because I don't need my paint to be in really specific areas. I think I'll do okay with just dabbing it a little bit, kind of all over. So I'm going to add a little paint to the inside of my little sunshine area, and then also kind of around this 3D rope that I have going on because those areas are dry right now. And then maybe I'll try some of the wet areas just to see if it works out. But I would suggest waiting till your paint dries, but also have fun because there's no wrong way to do this. So I put my sponge in water first, and then I picked up just a little bit of paint on the corner of my sponge. And now I'm gonna go in and add some color. And right now I am already not loving this. It's like too much color, but I'm going to show you how to take some off, because that's kind of a part of this process. It's adding things and then taking them away and just using what remains, which hopefully makes sense in like 2 minutes. So it's really, really bright, which I don't want, but I'm going to use the other side of my sponge, or actually the other part of the sponge that I cut off, to pick up some of this paint. So let me put this in a dirty water, kind of. And your hands are going to get dirty, so it's good to have napkins around. And if you aren't using sponges, you can actually use the napkin for this next step. So this is a dirty napkin. It's a little wet, which is fine. It just has the paint on it. And we can just go back in and pick up some of the paint that we want to take out. So I want that black to come back through here. So I'm just taking off some of the paint. And it's working pretty well right now. This is looking the way I want it to. But I want to take off more paint, so I'm going to put a little more water on there and really try to get that black to come back up. Because I just want my lighter color around this rope edge. Okay. And I'm using this greenish color so that next week I can add my gold paint and it will kind of have like a rusted look. So that's the idea. We'll see how well it turns out. I think it's going to be okay. But yeah, the sponge picks up a lot more of that paint that I just put down. So that's a good note. And the sponge I'm using is just a cut up sponge from the Dollar Tree. It's one of the car wash sponges. And you see how big this is and then how small of a piece I'm using. So this will last a really long time. And it's $1. So if you are going to use something, maybe you have an old car wash sponge in the house, that could work, because it doesn't necessarily need to be the cleanest, newest thing that you use. And then I have fast food napkins also, so I think a lot of us might have those kind of laying around. So just take a little bit of that. And so honestly, this is basically what you're doing today or for the rest of the week. Just adding your color where you want it and then picking up that color from the areas that you don't want it. So if you want your color to go on here more accurately, you're going to want to use the Q-tips or the smaller paintbrush. But I want this rusted kind of look and this worn look. So using my sponges works well for me in what I'm doing. So if you have some ideas about how you want to do this and what you expect it to look like, let us know in the comments, because you might give me some ideas that I can incorporate into mine. So I'm going to try out this Q-tip so we can see how that works. Let's do that in this middle area. Move that up where we can all see it. And I have my paint over here, so let me slide this over. And it is a little lighter than I want, but when you're mixing paint, I like to start with the white and then add a little bit of color, because it's easier to make the paint darker, but you end up wasting a lot of white paint if you try to make your colors lighter. So that's why I have my lighter color here and then my darker color here, because I'm just going to add a little more of the darker color to darken it very, very slightly, so that I'm not wasting a ton of paint. And I'm just using these Q-tips because I always have so many at home. So many Q-tips all over the house. But if this is not something that you keep in your home, don't feel the need to go out and buy them. Use what you have. Any small type of mixing stick will do. Even a toothpick will work. If you have a paintbrush, you can mix with your paintbrush. Another thing that we seem to have a lot of is plastic knives that we never use with takeout food. So you can mix with a plastic knife. And I feel like I have a lot on there. And I'm mixing on wax paper because it holds the paint well. And if I wanted to keep this paint and use it later on, I could just cover it with like plastic wrap, but come back to it later. So I really like to use wax paper because it is cheaper than what they call palette paper, but it's kind of the same thing. So back over on our work surface. So I'm going to use this to get in here on the sun part, because I know I want this to be gold, so I want the edges to have that green rusted look. And it's kind of picking up some of the black, so I'm just going to flip it and use the other side to try to get that brighter green in there. And I'm not worried about it looking like super great or neat or anything. I just want to get the color in there and then pick a little bit of it back up just for a hint of that green. So I'm going to use my napkin again and just kind of dab in the middle there. And if it's not picking up enough of the paint, then I would say go ahead and wet it again. But right now we are in the middle, very close to the end of making our assemblage collage, and it's going to look a little crazy while you're in the process of it because it's not complete. So don't worry if your stuff is looking kind of crazy like mine. That means you're on the right track. Hopefully you are having fun and learning some interesting techniques that you can use to do more of these, or even in something else that you do. You go, oh yeah, I learned how to, create this really rusted effect from Miss Rachel on that Monday thing where she made that weird collage. So hopefully you're having fun. Get some of the stuff out. And if you are working alongside me, at this point, you'll probably have something pretty interesting to show. So I would love to see some pictures in the comments if you have them. And be careful with your paper, your napkin, because it might just come off on your image. So I'm just going to use this Q-tip to pick up the excess and just throw it away. And I'm using a new Q-tip to kind of blot this and pick up the color. And if you're not getting enough color picked up, like if it's too bright, you can just go back in with your background color, which I will do, and darken it up a bit. But like I said, sometimes you will need to wait until different layers dry, because that might work better. So I think at this point I probably need to stop and let this black layer dry so that I can get my brighter color in there the way that I want it and not all muddy like it is over here. So this is probably a good place to stop for today, because this is going to be the bulk of our collage, and then next week we're going to put on our finishing touches and finish up this whole thing and make it look great. So thank you so much for joining me today and continuing to persevere through this collage. I really hope that you do the 3 things that we're doing today, which is adding our images. However you want to add them, you can glue them or do the paper mache like I did. If you have bulkier items, you may need to look up what glue will work best for them. So if you have comments about what kind of glue to use, if you have bigger items to add, go ahead and ask me in the captions. I will be checking them and I'll be helping you throughout the week. So make sure you use your resources. Use me. So add your items to the background, and then we are using our background paint to kind of make them fade into the background a little more. And then we're also using our colorful highlighter paint to draw out some of the details that we've kind of hidden. So it's a lot of back and forth and it's really experimental. So the steps in the caption do not need to be done in the order that they're in the caption. Just make sure you're doing all 3 so that you are creating a lot of interest and we can see all the hard work that we've already done for the past 2 weeks. So thank you so much for joining me, Miss Rachel, and working on your collage. Make sure you are following Cap at Home on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube so that you can catch our videos when they come out and view our library of art tutorials that we've been doing since April. So we have a ton of stuff for you to do, and if you're looking for something new, make sure you join us throughout the rest of the week on Tuesday and Wednesday, but not Thursday, because Thursday's a holiday this week. But Tuesday and Wednesday, we are going to have more art tutorials, and we will be looking for you so that you can do some art with us. Thank you so much. Again, this is Cap at Home. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.